Thanks for having me, Luke. Thanks for the nice introduction. I'm here to talk to you about the new Bixby. How many people know what Bixby is? Been following this story? Do you use it? Some? All right, so I want to give you a high-level picture, a little bit of the technology under the hood. How many here are technical or developers? A lot, nice. So you can actually program Bixby yourself, and I'll give you what you need to know to get started with that. And then I'm going to tell you something, we're very excited about something new, which is that the Bixby Marketplace just launched about 10 days ago, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. So the talk, evolution of the assistant, but first I want to talk about the evolution of interaction. So we noticed, as Luke says, I'm old, and I've been here a long time, a veteran. I've noticed that every 10 years, the way people interact with computers changes. So in the 80s, boom, the PC dropped on everyone's desk. You had to learn about the Windows and the mice and all of that. 10 years later, approximately, there came the web. And it was all about hyperlinks and bookmarks and URLs. 10 years later, and I bet you know where this is going, we now had apps and smartphones. And now, if you think about it, last year was the 10th anniversary of the App Store. So the question is it time for a new paradigm, a new way of interacting with computing? Now, I know many of you are thinking, why do I need a new way? I'm happy with my existing ways. Well, if you think about it, each new paradigm enables computing in new contexts. So when you had the PC, you could only access computing that was on your physical machine. The internet let you get to computing that was on machines around the world, so much bigger compute power. But you still had to sit at your desk to interact with a computer. Mobile let you interact with computing anywhere. You could be on a park bench or on the road or walking down the street like this and bumping into people. That's enabled. So what is the next paradigm? We think it's an assistant. And what would an assistant bring that a conversational assistant bring that you can't do already? Well, it's about contexts. So there are moments, believe it or not, when a web browser and a smartphone are not appropriate. Can you think of any? So number one, you're driving down the road. I hope you're not swiping on apps or using that giant screen on your Tesla, while you're driving. If you're running with your smartwatch, it's really inconvenient to be going like that. Cars. If you're in your house, cooking or washing dishes, again, it's difficult. If you're watching TV, it's not appropriate. There are many contexts in life where today you're not computing, but an assistant who can understand you, who can help you get tasks done. In all of these contexts, it is appropriate. You can drive and say, oh, I forgot, order some flowers for my mom. Great, done. Things of that sort in any context. So that's what we need as paradigm, but today, the assistant is not there. Now, I helped start Siri and Bixby and been involved in this space a long time. There are billions of requests that flow through the assistants every single day, but I would be the first to say assistants are not important. Not really important. Why? If I said, you're not allowed to use your web browser for a week, you can't use your smartphone for a week, you'd be like, I can't live my life. I said, I'm taking away your favorite assistant for 2 weeks. You'd be like, that's a little inconvenient, but I don't live my life on my assistant, right? So the question is, what would it take to elevate the assistant paradigm to be as important or more important than the web or mobile? So we've tried to help out the industry, and we've boiled it down into 4 steps. And I believe whichever company can achieve these 4 things completely will become the most important technology company for the next decade. So if you think about it, when the PC was there, it was all Microsoft and Intel. When the smartphones came out, it was Samsung and Apple, right? Those are the most important companies. The assistant as a paradigm is, I think, going to be that scale important if done correctly. So here's what it takes. Number one assistant from a user perspective. Today, other competitors with speakers, they use name dispatch. You have to say, assistant, ask app 7 to do command 5. That, if you want to access a third-party skill or action, that's what you're saying. Now, there are 80,000 assistants or skills in the store. I can't remember 80,000 different command names and command sets. So I just want to be able to say one assistant. If I say, in the current crop, I might say, assistant, ask OpenTable, find restaurants near my house. Maybe it'll say, well, where do you live? Do you want me to remember that for next time? You say, yeah, I'd like that. But now if you say, assistant, ask movie tickets, find movies near my house, it's a whole different assistant. It might say, where do you live? If they've coded it that way. So I just want one assistant. If I tell it something, it knows it. I can use that in a pretty natural way without having to remember command sets. Number 2, I want to be able to access the assistant from any device. So conceptually, it's in the cloud. And the device becomes a context. So if you take Siri, Siri actually lives in the phone conceptually. I mean, there's a lot of cloud technology to power it. But if I have 2 devices, those are 2 different Siris that don't talk to each other. I want one assistant in the cloud. So if that way I don't have to remember, oh, what did I tell the TV assistant? And does the car assistant know? And the refrigerator assistant? Too much. I want one assistant. And I just say, this is the mode through which I interact with the assistant. Number 3, powered by every service. So today's assistants, if you look at the usage, 90+% of the commands go to the built-in functionalities prepared by the big companies, by the Apple, Google, Amazons. Very small percent goes to the 80,000 different skills available in the store, the third-party assistant. We have to flip that. So imagine the web, if 80% of the websites in the world had to be, or 90% had to be coded by Google. And it wouldn't be the web that we know it today. Google has some great sites, should be a tiny percent. Same, so one of the key differences that we're doing with Bixby is I walk around the halls, I say, we are not trying to build the world's best assistant. And everyone goes, oh. And I say, we are trying to enable the world to build the best assistant. It is about the third-party ecosystem. As you'll see later, third parties with other platforms get a short stick. If you're working at a Google or an Amazon internally, you get access to tools and capabilities that third parties do not get. They get a very simplistic little web-based tool to let you do a little natural language parsing, and that's it. Google engineers are not using the services they're giving to Google. With Bixby, we want it to be about third parties. And so we give them the same exact tools that we use to build our internal Samsung services. And it's a much more democratic system. And finally, personalized just for you. And personalization means many different things. Yes, I wanted to learn my preferences over time. I like French food, and I don't like kale and all that kind of stuff. But I also wanted to really let me shape the services, because I care about certain brands. I have certain hobbies. If you think of mobile, we both have smartphones. I bet there's only maybe 10% overlap in our mobile experiences, because I've downloaded some apps and you have different apps, right? An assistant, what should be more personal than a personal assistant? I should be able to shape what are the services I want, what are the brands I care about, what do I like to do, and define that surface area of the assistant, and then expand it over time. Today, every assistant on the market is exactly the same for every user, right? It is not personal at all from that context. So these are the 4 points that I think if you could do right, this would scale usage and the ecosystem in a way that it's not today, and the assistant could emerge as a paradigm as important as the web and as mobile. So with that, I started a company 6-7 years ago called Viv Labs. 2.5 years ago, we were acquired by Samsung, and our goal is to bring that vision to the assistant world across devices. So here we say we are moving from a world where apps live on your phone. Now, I'll just take a pause here. When we joined, Samsung was already working on something called Bixby. But it was a Bixby 1.0, and it was largely about controlling the apps on your phone. Viv and the new Bixby has a very different view. It's about a world where it's actually powered by the services in the cloud, right? So if I say, get me a ride to San Francisco, Bixby 1 would have opened up the Uber app on your phone and moved the screen to a certain page in the app. And here, our vision is you don't even need the app. It's going to access the same APIs that the app accesses, but in a new way. And what's great about that is now it works on my TV, it works on my speaker, where there is no app. It works on my refrigerator. So we're moving away from apps to an assistant that's powered by cloud services, that lives in the cloud, and it knows your preferences, and those preferences are across the devices, right? And we have a seamless experience across every device. And then Samsung, this you guys may or may not know, Samsung has agreed publicly that they will open up Bixby to beyond Samsung devices, right? So we start with a 1 billion device footprint or something like that. That's a great enticement to developers to be able to program new services to all those users. But once this takes off, once this is as big as the internet, and every request is flowing from every device through us to access every service in the world, we don't want to limit it to just Samsung devices. We want this to be a new business model, billions of dollar business model, like the web, like what the App Store was doing for the mobile, like the search engine was doing for the web. We want to make that as big as possible, and the way to do it is to open it up to all devices. So if you haven't played with the new Bixby recently, I'm just going to highlight a few things of the experience. So first, you can speak pretty naturally. What are the top events here in Los Angeles tonight? When you get results, we don't want to just give you 500 possible results. An assistant should be curated a little bit. It should try to determine what are the best 3 results for you along different dimensions and why. So here it says, well, this is the most popular. This one is trending near you, and this is the highest rated performer. So it's looked at all possible results and tried to surface some to help accelerate the time to task. And of course, if you want to see all of them, you can scroll down and see plenty more. And then finally, we really want the assistant not to be about finding, but about doing. So things like we've integrated right with Samsung Pay, payment service, so that you can book a ticket end to end in a conversational way, all the way through buying the ticket. And if you have a credit card anywhere within the Samsung ecosystem, it'll be available to Bixby. Or if you enter it one time here at Bixby, you can now, any service within Bixby that accepts credit cards will have a low friction way to use that and transact within Bixby. So we have a much stronger focus about getting things done, booking, buying, reserving, doing, than just searching. Here's a little video just so you can see it for yourself in action.
Welcome to the new Bixby. Bixby
Luke, what do you think of the choices?
Bixby has highlighted circumstances based upon what is learned about my preferences. If you want to see more results, you can simply scroll down. But, instead of French, I feel like Italian. Make a reservation for 2 people at an Italian restaurant instead. And I can see several Italian restaurants. Siena Bistro. That sounds good. Reserve this one. And I go ahead and make that reservation, but I also need an Uber there. Get an Uber to Siena Bistro. And I can see I can get an Uber to Siena Bistro as well. Flying concerts in Las Vegas.
So I'm going to stop it here. It goes a little bit more, but you get the idea. And what's important is not just the functionality that happens to be there today. It's the interaction style, kind of a conversational, fluid interaction. It's a really rich display. When you have an Uber, you can have maps and see where the little car is. And so compared to any other assistant on the market, many of the others have started with a speaker. We really start from a really rich, beautiful mobile experience. And of course, when you build a capsule, as we call it, it will also work across many different devices automatically. But we have a very interesting experience. And as you'll see later, we're giving you the tools to build that kind of experience for any service that you want. So one of course, you guys all know this, one of the appeals, so how do you get developers to do that, is to say, Samsung has an installed footprint of 1 billion devices, something like that. I've heard that 70% of US households have at least one Samsung device, and the majority of those have more than one Samsung device. So they're in the houses, they're in the places where people are, and they use today. They're number 1 in mobile, number 1 in TVs, and globally, they have portable speaker shared. They acquired Harman Kardon as a speaker company. There's US market share for refrigerators and other appliances, so many, many devices. And if you're a developer, you can now build a capsule, one of these great experiences like we showed you, and deploy it across Bixby. So coming soon to many different devices, and that's a great way to get, becomes a new channel for you as a developer. Yes, you have a website. Yes, you have a mobile app, but this is a new way to interact with customers. So next step, let's see what this one is talking about. So last November, we gave developers the tools. This was at SDC. We announced Bixby Developer Studio was available for download. This is a full-featured IDE that lets you build experiences. It's unlike anything on the market. And I'm going to show it to you and actually teach you very quickly how to build a capsule. But first, I want to say what's really cool about the technology under the hood. We are not just giving you the best development environment. I think the ideas in Bixby Developer Studio will change the way software is built at a big scale. So let me show you what I mean. So if you think about it, those of you who are programmers, the relationship between a human programmer and a machine for decades was pretty simple. The human said, I'm going to tell you what to do. I'll give you the code. You execute it. Right? That's most software, 99% of software on the market. A new paradigm came along that everyone's so excited about, AI, machine learning, neural nets. In this case, the relationship is a little bit different. The human programmer actually says, here are examples. If you get this input, I want you to generate that output. And for this input, I want you to generate that output. And you give millions of training examples, but it's actually AI. It's actually the machine who codes the logic on how to create that function mapping. And the funny part is now humans have absolutely no idea how it works, right? It's literally a massive, massive network of numbers. And there's concerns about that. Where are maybe there are blind spots. It might be good for lots of examples, but not other examples. And how am I going to know? And is it reliable? Because we can't even understand it. So it's a very AI-driven process. So what we launched with Bixby last November is yet a third paradigm. And it's literally the human developer and an AI sit side by side and code the use case interactions for your assistant. And I'm going to show you what that means and how it works. But I think, as far as I've seen, this is unlike anything I've seen on the market in any industry, not just for assistants, but this is not how software is typically built. And so we have a technology we call dynamic program generation. I'm going to show you some examples of that in a minute. But literally what you do is you model the world. You say, for my domain, maybe it's restaurants, I've got a restaurant object. And a restaurant object, we call it a concept, has properties, like it has a name, it has an address, it has a cuisine style, has a phone number. And you list the properties. You can say a little bit of information about them. You might say, cuisine style is preference learnable, and you tag it. That means as the user is looking at restaurants, just by tagging preference learnable, Bixby will start to automatically learn if I like French food or Italian food or what have you. And you wouldn't tag phone number as preference learnable because no one says, oh, I like restaurants that start with, that have 1, 2, 3 in the middle of their phone number. I mean, it's not. So a developer models it. They say, here are the concepts. And then they say, here are the actions. You can find restaurants. You can search by these criteria. You can make a reservation at a particular restaurant and a date, time, and a party size. Right? So you model those pieces. And then when a user makes a request, get me a ride to the French restaurant on Main Street, there's actually a program. Well, I have to go figure out which Main Street is it. I have to go to a mapping server, and there's a lot of Main Streets, and is it the closest one or the one in Boston or whatever? Okay, I got the Main Street. Now I have to look for French restaurants. Okay, now I've got a whole list of French restaurants. Which one do I choose? Are there just one French restaurant? Maybe I should ask the user, and I should learn from that. Okay, now that I know which one he's talking about, I can contract an Uber, but Uber has a whole bunch of different products. Do you want the Uber X or the Uber SUV? And I should learn that. So there's a program that gets written to handle that user use case. And it's an AI who's going to code that up for you. And as part of that, it will do all of the integrations, like calling out to the different services that the user has access to, and all of the interactions. Anytime it needs to ask a question, did you want an Uber X or an Uber SUV? It will learn from that. And if you always answer Uber X, it'll stop asking you the question. Like, it should be a learning assistant who doesn't ask the same question over and over and over again. So that is built into the way this platform works. So as I mentioned, last November, we launched the tools. For those who are technically minded, you can go to bixby.developer.samsung.com. Or bixbydevelopers.com is also a shortcut. You can download the IDE. So if you go there, it looks like this. We actually now support Windows, Mac, and Linux. You can join the community, get questions answered. We have videos, documentation, tutorials, all sample applications, all sorts of different things. So you can get started today building for Bixby. This is what the IDE, the Developer Studio, looks like when you actually download it to your desktop. I'm going to give you a live demonstration on how to code for Bixby quickly, what it looks like, and what that AI dynamic program generation is about. But it's super cool. And I'll give you a live demo. I'm going to switch computer in a second. So let's assume that now you know how to build a capsule and You know how to program for Bixby. We just 2 weeks ago launched a marketplace. So it's still kind of in its early stages, but this means for the first time end users can discover new services through language and interaction, can choose among all of the set of services that are out there that are being added to every single day by developers, and can set preferences. So let me give you just a quick demo of what the marketplace looks like.
Let's take a look at how the new Bixby marketplace works. To launch the marketplace, open Bixby and swipe right. And here you can see marketplace. And scroll down, you can see there's trending capsules, staff picks, and then a list of popular categories. Let's view all of the categories. And you know, I'm interested in rideshare, so let's see what's in travel and transportation. That's amazing. So Lyft and Uber are available. So I'm going to go to Lyft, and I'm going to add that to Bixby. And then I'm going to go to Uber, and I'm going to add that to Bixby. And now I've added both Uber and Lyft to Bixby. Okay, now I need to ride to the airport. Let's try. Hi, Bixby. I need to ride to the airport.
Which service do you want to use?
And because I enabled both Lyft and Uber, Bixby is asking me which one I want to use. For today, let's use Uber. Uber.
An UberX car to San Francisco at the airport. San Francisco will be about $48. The closest driver is 2 minutes away. Ready to book your ride?
So now I can book my ride on Uber. Now, as you notice, Bixby asks me, do I want to use Uber or Lyft? Let's say I have a preferred ride-sharing company. How do I set that? Let's go see. So go back to here, and I go into my Bixby settings, and I go down to preferred capsules. And as you can see, a rideshare at the bottom, it says always ask, but I can set it to Uber, or I can set it to Lyft. Now that I set it to Lyft, let's try that again. Hi, Bixby. I need a ride to the airport.
Where would you like to get dropped off?
And you can see it automatically launched Lyft. So I've made Lyft my default rideshare application. But if I want Uber, it's easy to get. I simply ask for a ID. On Uber, I need a ride to the airport. And voila, you can see the Uber comes up, and I can book an Uber ride to the airport. There.
You can also just use more natural language and say, get me an UberX or whatever, but get me an Uber. But that's basically the idea of the marketplace. We have a set of categories. Any developer out there can create new capsules. You go through an approval workflow. They'll publish and show up in the store. Users can discover them. Ultimately, it's the user who has control of the preferences. So if you say, get me a ride, it'll ask you which one, and you can either set preferences or use specific language. So it's pretty natural, and it's all integrated right in the flow of Bixby itself. You don't have to really go to a store and then do it. If you had, he could have also said, just get me a ride, and it'll say, you don't have any rideshare providers, do you want, and then list the ones that are there. So right in the course of getting a task done, you discover and interact. So the last thing, I have a few more minutes. I'm going to switch laptops. So I'm going to give you a quick live demo of what it's like to build for Bixby. So this is the, first of all, as I mentioned, you go to bixbydeveloper.com. This is what it looks like today. You can download the IDE and get access to all the documentation. We have really good searching in the documentation, so it'll search very quickly across reference guides and developer guides, etc. Within the IDE, or the Bixby Developer Studio, you create capsules. So you can either create a new capsule or open an existing one. I'm going to just do an existing one for now. This is one of the sample capsules that you can download later and play with. It's called the Space Resorts capsule. It's something like a hotel's capsule in the future. So you book space resorts on Mars or with a certain gravity, etc. See if my internet is taking a little while. Make sure I'm connected. Yeah. All right, hopefully it'll get there. Let me show you a little bit how it's built. So I mentioned you model concepts and actions. So let me go under the concepts section. So here for space resorts, I'm going to have, let's see where it is, or I'll just search for it. The space resorts model is going to basically just be an object with lots of properties. So you have properties like the attributes, what planet it's on, its gravitational pull. You can notice that properties, you can either say, well, I can have many amenities or attributes, or I can have, 0, 1, or more. Certain ones are required or not required. So you just set and tag different attributes for the properties. And then an action, so if I do find, let's see, find space resorts, an action is going to take in a number of inputs. So here I'm going to be able to find space resorts by planet, by name, or by search criteria. And what it's going to return is a list of object types. Space resort is that object I showed you previously, like the hotel, the space resort. And then there's a little bit of logic for error handling. Once you have that, this is really a model around an API. So you can either call a remote endpoint. If you have an API service to find your space resorts, you can just have that running on a different machine. You can also write a little bit of JavaScript. So the find space resorts is actually just a little JavaScript code wrapper that's going to massage the inputs, call an API, or what have you. So it's pretty easy to connect your model to some actual services. And then once you've defined the concepts and the actions, it's now time to determine the use cases. So what do I want a user to say, and what should it do? And this is the cool part. This is some of where the magic happens. So you start out building a use case just by using language. So I'm going to type out something like, I want a reservation for 3 people at a space resort on Mars with an oxygen bar. And so then what it's asking for is I need to give the end goal. What am I trying to get to? In this case, I actually want a reservation. So I'm going to ask for the make reservation goal. And then I need to tag the inputs. So 3 people. What is 3? 3 is actually the number of astronauts that I want to bring with me. Mars is a planet of Mars type. An oxygen bar is going to be one of those search criteria that we saw. So that's it. I want to make a reservation for 3 people on a planet with some search criteria. I hit save, and at that moment, instantly, a program gets generated for me using all of the models that I've defined, the concepts, the actions, etc. This will have all of the data integration required and all of the user interaction required. And right away, if I hit the compile NL model, it's going to learn from those examples. Now it's told me it's gone blue, which told me it's learned this example. And I can now bring up the emulator, or the simulator, for a particular device and actually give it a try. So let me try something like make a reservation at a resort on Jupiter with orbital ziplining. So here you're going to get to see what is the mobile interface be like. All right, so I've got which space resort would you like? I've got a few, Europa's Jewel. Let me drill in and look at the details on that. Or I've selected one. When do you want to stay? So now I can either choose this graphically. You can do anything in a graphical interface, or I could do it through language. So I might say, the weekend of Christmas 2027. Should have some space resorts by that point. It's now asking me a question, basically, what kind of room do I want? Now, it's going to automatically learn that, hey, if I'm going with 2 people, I probably want the romantic suite, honeymoon suite. It's a little bit more expensive. But there's also if I go with my whole family, I'm going to take the lab. It's a lot cheaper. And so it'll built in and learn that, and it's always one step away. I haven't set up this demo, but I'll enter some information. See if that'll work, pass validation. And here it is. It's at a confirmation step, ready to complete my transaction. On these dates, I can always refine these. I'll just bring up one other debugger. So this is the debug view. So this is actually the program. It's a little hard to see, but that is generated automatically by the AI. I did not have to write this code of what is happening, what gets passed in, when do you interact, where is machine learning applied. All of that gets done for you. You can click on any step and see exactly what's happening at every point in time. We also have very cool testing capabilities. So let's see if this capsule has some stories. Base, maybe. Oh, maybe this capsule doesn't have it. But we have some really cool graphical dialogue testing tools. So this is the environment that you can pretty quickly build rich interactive experiences for Bixby. And it's a pretty engaging. And like I said, because of this AI writing the program for you, kind of side by side for each use case that you come up with. Now, the use cases have to be, you need to have the actions and the concepts to make them happen, but it's putting it all together for you. I think it's a pretty exciting and interesting development experience. And now you can publish your capsules into the marketplace, which just opened. So BixbyDevelopers.com. Yes, we've had questions. And that's actually the end of my talk, so I'm happy to take any questions.